I'm Ben.
And I'm Emily.
Welcome to Spotlight on New Zealand.
Tonight we focus on one of New Zealand's greatest tragedies, the sinking of the Wahine. Throughout tonight's show we will try to find out as much as possible about the disaster so we, as a nation, can begin to understand this terrible tragedy.
On the morning of 10th of April 1968, after an overnight voyage from Lyttelton, the ferry Wahine encountered the worst of a violent southerly storm, with winds gusting 160 per hour while entering the Wellington Harbour, with passengers terrified and feeling very ill indeed. The captain and his crew attempted to get their ship back on course and out of danger. After many hours, the passengers and crew had to abandon ship and were flung out into the rough seas of the harbour. In life rafts, they had to make the perilous crossing to Wellington's rocky shores, where they were met by local Wellingtonians desperate to help. These rescuers could see the state of the harbour and understood how difficult the crossing had become, perhaps even before those on board had realised. We are lucky enough tonight to have footage recovered of a resident in the seaside village of Eastbourne back in 1968. They were among the many heroic rescuers on that fateful day. Here's Wellington's correspondent Ben Hogan with his 1968 report.
Hello, here we have a very heroic man, Frank. How did you get involved in the rescue?
I saw trouble from my window and I got on my boat. I sailed to the Wahine and collected some people and got them back to shore.
What was the scariest part about it?
When I was trying to get the people out of my boat and the waves were crashing against my legs.
How do you feel about what you've just done?
I feel very proud and surprised I went out there alone.
You? We're out of time.
An interesting interview. Our thanks to Ben Hogan for sending us that old report. Those unfortunate enough to be on the Wahine on the 10th of April 1968 had to deal with a very rough night and day. Many passengers were throwing up continuously on those extremely rough seas. The passengers were all told that the storm would pass and to hold tight. Most thought it was a typical Wellington southerly storm and that the Wahine would ride it out. Unfortunately, at 9:41 a.m, the Wahine was carried onto the rocks of Barrett Reef, sustaining serious damage to the length of her hull, the starboard that's right to us landlubbers, and the port that's left engine stopped working. The anchors were dropped, but it was some time before they held firm. Rescue attempts were made impossible by the raging gales and massive swells. By early afternoon, all 734 passengers and crew were ordered to abandon ship and get into the life rafts. Only 4 of the 8 rafts could be used because of the angle of the now sinking ship. All 734 people on the ship managed to escape, but due to the stormy seas, 51 lost their lives. We can only imagine what those giant waves looked like to those people in their small life rafts, or worse, for those who had capsized. Our film technicians have found some much damaged footage of 2 survivors, filmed only hours after the disaster in a civil defence shelter. We have carefully cleaned and restored the film. This is the first time it has been shown to the New Zealand public. Let's roll that footage.
How are you? Are you okay? Oh gosh, are you warm enough? Okay. Are we rolling right? I'm Julia, and joining me now is survivor James from today's disaster. James, what was it like on the Wahine?
Well, once we got the siren to get our life jackets on, that was scary, and the siren to get down to the restaurant. I didn't know what they were thinking to get down to the restaurant, but yep.
What was it like on shore?
Well, you could see the fire brigade, the policemen, and the seagulls, and most of all, you could see the ambulance, and yeah.
Were you with someone or were you by yourself?
I was with my friend Max. He's in hospital, and I think he'll be fine.
Are you proud of yourself for surviving?
Yes, because the waves were 13 feet tall, and I'm very proud of that. Me surviving. No.
Well, thank you. Now we're out of time. Get this, James, a hot drink.
A fascinating piece of New Zealand history. We're so lucky to have such amazing technology that allows us to still view it.
And now let us look at a human error being the possible reason for the sinking of the Captain Wahine. Hector Gordon Robertson had been master of the ill-fated ferry for some time. He had sailed her to and from Wellington numerous times in strong winds and high seas, and was an experienced captain. It was Captain Robertson's decision to enter the harbour when they did. They had arrived 20 minutes behind schedule. When freak gusts of 100 knots or more struck the vess and put them out of line, he was quite coated at the time as saying if those winds had struck 5 minutes later, we would have been through the entrance and could have come down the harbour. We could have come down with the dropped anchor in Oriental Bay, where it was quite calm. Some people suggested that Captain Robertson was too late in his decision to put the passengers into the life rafts. They have suggested they should have been evacuated much earlier. Captain Robertson, however, feels he made the right decision, saying, "People who say that don't know that what they are talking about. If I had put them off any earlier, everyone would have been lost. I would have had 600 lives on my consequence." In a moment we will take a closer look at the weather on that fateful day. But now let's look at an interview given by Ewan in his 1972.
How are you? Are you okay? Oh. How are you? Are you okay? Oh gosh, are you warm enough? Okay, are we rolling right? I'm Ewan, and joining me now is the captain that survived the Wahine of today's disaster. When did you know the ship was in danger?
Well, the weather was as bad as I was told, and then the radar broke, and so we couldn't really see the rocks, and so some water came in because we bumped the rocks, and so we called for the tugboat to come, and there was only one, and they came, and the cable broke, so I was getting quite nervous then.
Were you nervous that you would sink?
Yes, the boat was tipping over, so I got my crew to tell the passengers to get on the starboard and then let down the lifeboats.
Were the lifeboats safe?
Well, there are two kinds, a wooden one and then one that you blew up. The wooden ones were safe, but then the ones that you blew up was not, because once you get on, it will just tip over.
Thank you for your time, Captain.
Fascinating old footage there. Let's look at the weather on 10th of April. To be stuck outside.
Cyclone Gazelle was first reported on the 5th of April 1968 when it hit French Candolia with storm warnings issued throughout New Zealand. The next day, earlier on the 9th of April, Cyclone Giselle hit Cape Reinga. Winds of up to 160 kilometers an hour caused massive damage to buildings. Territory rain flooded farmland in Northland. Drowning hundreds of farm animals. A farmer was also killed when he was blown off a haystack. The cyclone's pattern of damage continued as it travelled across the North Island but turned south down the east coast. Ships were driven ashore and landslips closed roads. Rain caused massive floodings and wind left roofs torn off and windows broken. By the time Cyclone Giselle hit Wellington on the morning of the 10th of April, another storm had driven up the west coast of the South Island from Antarctica. The two storms met over the capital, causing huge damage. Winds in Wellington were the strongest ever, recording at one point reaching speeds of 275 kilometers an hour as the storm moved on to the South Island. Hundreds of Christchurch houses lost their roofs, and both of the Avon and the Housecote rivers flooded throughout Canterbury. Over 500 headquarters of forest were destroyed in Southland. The flooding was the worst since 1913. Some people were stranded on the roofs of their houses and had to be reduced by jet boats. Cyclone Giselle finally blew out somewhere in the Southern Ocean. And there you have it, folks. Perhaps if weather forecasting could have been in what is now any disaster would never have happened. Back to the studio.
Thank you, Daniela. What an incredible storm. It must have been. Well, that's all we have time for this evening. We hope you have learned something about your country's history and about the darkness of the days. Please join us.
Please join us next week when we focus on the Springbok tour of 1981. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you again next time. From the whole team at Spotlight on New Zealand, goodbye, e noho rā.
E noho rā.